I'm really delighted to invite Professor Dina Porat from Tel Aviv University, who's going to address us on the question of Buber after the Holocaust, reflections to his testimony before the Anglo-American Committee of Inquiry in 1946. Dina, please. Good.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you, the organizers, Neta Peretz, and the whole Academy of Sciences for the conference. Before we start, I'd like to mention the fact that the day before yesterday, Professor Yosef Yoske Agassi passed away. He was married to Buber's granddaughter, Yehudit. He was one of the pillars of our faculty in Tel Aviv, and it is with great sorrow that we learned about it. We have here his great-granddaughter, and it's really a sad occasion. Though he carried on bravely until the age of 95, it is still definitely a big loss. Okay. Where is Dominique? Okay. Why is that? Because I'm going to say the opposite. Yeah. The topic I chose is Buber's testimony in front of the committee, the Anglo-American Committee of Inquiry, which was held here, or held its meeting here in Jerusalem on March 1946. It was the Anglo-American Committee of Inquiry on Jewish problems in Palestine and Europe. Okay, Bauer gave his testimony on behalf of the Ichud movement, the Ichud Association of Palestine, and he gave it together. They were three of them, one after the other, Yehuda Leib Magnus and Moshe Smilansky. But it was Buber's testimony which aroused anger and insult and reactions all over the Yishuv. There was you couldn't find a Jewish Hebrew-written newspaper that did not react to his testimony. So this is the topic, the testimony and the reactions. I'd like to say that the committee was composed of 12 members, 6 British, 6 Americans, each with its chairperson, and all sections, fractions, parties in the Yishuv and in the Arab population came to testify. I wouldn't read, it's a long list, but I would just mention that Chaim Weizmann and David Ben-Gurion and Chertok and Rabbi Herzog and the Sephardi Rabbi Uziel and the Sephardi community, and whoever could come and was allowed in came. Whoever couldn't sent a survey or a brochure or a statement instead of a testimony. So everyone was presented and everyone wanted to have the word. It was an event. It was an event. Also, of course, the Arab population. The Arab population was represented by Jamal al-Husseini, who was deputy head of the Supreme Arabic Council, and then came also George Hakim, who was a Greek Orthodox Archbishop, Musa el-Alami, who was then head of what was called the Arab Office, and they all also had representatives, others as well, and if not, they also presented thick, sometimes volumes. Musa el-Alami presented 3 volumes in order to present their claims, and their claims were opposite to those of the Jewish Yishuv. What was the mandate of this committee, this Anglo-American committee? They came to investigate 3 topics. One was the question of the land of Israel and the impact of Jewish immigration from the economic, social, and political point of view on the country. Second was the situation of the Jews in Europe. Is there a possibility to continue Jewish existence in Europe after the Holocaust and the war? And the third one, the wish, the desire of the Jews and the DPs, displaced persons, survivors, to immigrate from all European countries to the land of Israel, in the midst of which, in the midst of this third point, was the question of 100,000 DPs to have the permission to immigrate immediately to the land of Israel. This was the mandate, and as you all agree, it was quite a complicated one. So this is the setting of time, of the mandate, of the people involved. And let me then tell you what my sources are. The primary sources are, of course, the protocols of the committee. They were published in English formally. They were translated into Hebrew, certainly. And then the press of the Hebrew community here. As I said, all newspapers were involved in reacting in anger. We'll see why. And one more primary source that I have the feeling that most of you do not know of, and this is the archive of a small group that was called Aldomi. I had the privilege of getting their archive, which was stored for personal reasons in the archive of the Tel Aviv municipality. The education department of Tel Aviv municipality, one of their main activists, Professor Fischel Schneerson, worked in this department, and there he put all the papers. And I had the privilege of getting them. Buber was one of the members of this small group of intellectuals, all of them first-class, central figures in the Yishuv, Ben Zion Dinur, Zeev, Schneerson, Rabbi Benjamin, Buber himself, and others. And they were created in 1942 with the aim of arousing more interest in the Yishuv, not just toward the Holocaust. Of course, the Yishuv was interested, all the families were there, but to analyze what is going on, what is Nazism, what are the proper Jewish reactions, what do we do now, how we will remember later. It was an active, small group which did not have a big practical, political impact, but they were respected, and Buber was one of them. There is a lot of correspondence from him with the other members. I found many. By the way, he had an exquisite, beautiful handwriting. It's calligraphy, it's not a handwriting. And whatever I found that was original, I, of course, made a copy first and then gave it to his collection in the Bet HaSfarim HaLaomi, in the National Library, to be stored in his collection. So, if you haven't heard about it, Buber was there, was a member, made practical suggestions, was part of meetings with the rescue committee, with the Jewish agency, immigration department, etc. And if you didn't know about the group, I urge you to read my paper on Aldomi and another paper called Martin Buber in the Land of Israel during the years of the Holocaust, 42, 44. Okay, so these are the sources, and this was the setting. And now, to my question, to the research question, the question that should, of course, accompany any paper, any presentation. How can one bridge? How can one understand the gap, the discrepancy between a Buber who was in Germany, 33, 38, was then a beacon of resistance, an exemplary model of standing up, of being an activist, a leader, leading a communal life, education, adults' education, a first-class enterprise that he held, and his membership in Aldomi, and their wish to understand the Holocaust and to raise awareness in the Yishuv, and their involvement with leaders in the Yishuv. How do you bridge between this and between the fact that Buber did not write much about the Holocaust? These were prolific years in his writing on other topics, not a lot about the Holocaust. In his testimony, to which we'll come in a minute, in his testimony before the Anglo-American Committee, he didn't even mention the word Holocaust. And this is March 1946. We are even less than a year after the war ended. So how do you bridge between this and that? And indeed, one has to say, this is what the sources are saying, that he was already criticized and the gap was already mentioned and drew attention before the Anglo-American Committee came. In 1942, there is a gathering of the Hebrew authors and poets, Agudat HaSofrim, the Association of Hebrew Poets and Authors. And Buber is speaking. And he is highly criticized for putting on the table questions of morals and ethics and for not speaking about the burning problems of rescue, etc. But you know that on the other hand, at the very same time, he is a member of Aldomi. And the criticism went on to say, the critics were mainly authors, poets, and other colleagues. And they say, he did not raise a voice in public during the 3 years of war and Holocaust. 39, 42, until this gathering is taking place, he did not really raise his voice. This Aldomi was not known all over, and he was not the central figure. Rabbi Benjamin, Schneerson were the central figures, so they say first, he did not raise his voice during these 3 years. Instead, he was member of the Association of Israel in the Nations, Agudat Israel Ba'amim, Brit Shalom, you all know of it. There is one group that is again less known, Al, Ain Lamed, he was member of, it was short-lived, and then Ichud, and the critics said, these are all cosmopolitan, universalist, non-realistic groups, small and annoying. Okay. Also, he was criticized as well because of his correspondence with Gandhi. Gandhi, it's a whole story in itself, but it is known, the correspondence is well known, the letters were published in many sources, and Buber was criticized for accepting Gandhi's position against violence in any form, even for self-defense. The critics said, well, how come? Self-defense is a must. We are hardly a year after the Holocaust, self-defense at least. So it was called his strange Gandhism. Buber's הגנדיזם המשונה של בובר. Okay, there were more. I'll read only, or I'll draw your attention to two more kinds of criticism. One is that Buber was asked many times. You showed us, Dominique, how central he was in World Academy. And in World Academy, World Intellectuals, etc., and he was asked to issue a manifesto, a declaration, to ask all intellectuals in the world, academies, universities, to come out, this is 1942, against the Holocaust, against the killing of the Jews. And he did not publish it. And there was, again, criticism, why didn't he publish it? And last but not least, criticism was because of his paper, his article from 1939, November 1939, אנחנו והם, they and us, in which he said that those who advocate in the land of Israel that the Jewish people is weak and therefore it should have power, this is doing, he said, and since this is really quite amazing, I will read it from the origin. Those who do so, who advocate the holding of power, do deeds of Hitler in the land of Israel, because they want us to worship Hitler's God after they would give him a Hebrew name, and those who do Hitler's deeds will be swallowed together with all their people. This was an insult that has not been forgiven to Buber. The Yishuv was ideologically center and left. If anyone was worshipped, this was Soviet Union. They all considered themselves anti-fascist, anti-Hitler, certainly so. So this was a paper that was not forgotten. Okay. Now, all this criticism came before the Anglo-American Committee. Buber was hurt and offended, collected all the criticism and answered them one by one in an article in which, again, the need for ethics and morals is the main issue. Now, I was notified that I do not have too much time. Since Dan Avnon is not here, can we steal some 5 minutes? No? Okay. So, as we said, all newspapers reacted. And I'm reading to you shortly from Haboker. Haboker was furious. And he said, what the Ichud people said, and especially Buber, before this committee of inquiry was reacted to by all Hebrew newspapers. One said the words were irresponsible. The other causing sorrow and pain. The third one dangerous. The fourth one immoral. And what we would like to ask, Haboker is asking, why shouldn't they be sued? Sued and tried by the court, by an authoritative Zionist high court. And why is that? I try to be short. In his testimony, in Buber's testimony, there were 4 points that roused anger and criticism. One, the first one is that since the prophets and today, 1946, the Jewish people has a task, he is obliged, the community is obliged to send streams of social and political justice throughout the world. To send streams of social and political justice throughout the world. Mapai's organ, Beterem, said, "We Jews have already taken care of the world. We gave it from our power and wisdom and activity and art and science and literature for centuries. And what did we get? We got the Holocaust. We don't have to care for them. They have to care for us. Why is it a condition?" Mapai organ is asking, why is it a condition that the Jewish people will be granted a state only if we are righteous enough and give the world justice? We have already given. So this was, the criticism went on, I must say. The world owes us. It's not we who owe the world, as Buber says, and makes it a condition. Second point, this is really something. Buber, mankind is fundamentally interested in the preservation of a vital and productive Jewish people, such as can grow if fostered by the unique connection of these people to this country. Mankind is fundamentally interested in preservation of a Gewalt. The Haboker and Hamashkif, Hatzofe is the religious one, Hamizrahi, Hamashkif, the revisionist party, said, sorry, March 1946, the world has shown not that it is interested in our welfare and existence, but in killing us, in raping, in murdering, in looting, in the opposite of the existence of the Jewish people. How could he have said that? Okay, 3. We have not finished. 3. A regenerated Jewish people, this is Buber, in Palestine, has not only to aim at living peacefully together with the Arab people, but also at a comprehensive cooperation with in opening and developing the country. Again, cooperating with the Arabs, living in peace, of course. This is a dream, this is the ideal, this is what we hope would lie in the future. But where is the Mufti? Did he forget that the Mufti, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, spent most of the year in Berlin with Hitler, befriending Eichmann, convincing them, trying to convince them that when the Wehrmacht enters the land of Israel, they will, with their population, kill the Jewish population. The Sochnut, the Jewish agency, Ben Gurion, brought lots of material to the inquiry committee showing that Arab population was pro-Nazi mainly during the war. And the Arab, at the same time that Buber is saying this, there are the Arab representatives, as we said, Musa al-Alami and Jamal al-Husseini and the others, who said the opposite. We don't want a Jewish population here. 100,000, they should stay in Europe. They are immigrants. They are not natives. We don't want them. So it was really a clash of feelings, of reactions. The last point, or the fourth one, I picked only the 4 most problematic. Buber says, as to the demand for autonomy, it does not, as the greater part of the Jewish people thinks today, necessarily lead to the demand for a Jewish state or for a Jewish majority. And he goes on to say that a state is not needed, a Jewish majority is not needed, there should be an equal number of Arabs and Jews. And this is, again, the critics are saying this is being said while the Nuremberg trials are going on. They started in October 45, as we all know. Now it is March 1946, and the Jewish people does not have representation because we don't have a state. They did not have a state at the time. The Nuremberg trials did not deal with the Holocaust in itself as a distinct crime in itself. It was mentioned in some of the trials, but not in itself, and no one was punished for it. And now is the time, this is the time to say that the Jews who were helpless and could not defend themselves that a state is not necessary. One of the newspapers said, it is not the Jewish state that is unnecessary. It is Buber's testimony that is unnecessary. These are the 4 points. And as I'm saying, there was a lot of anger, a lot of criticism. Akiva Ernst Simon, a student, a disciple of Buber, summed it up and said, he is more accepted by his non-Jewish readers than by his Jewish readers. He sits among, he's in his people, יושב בתוך עמו, but he is considered strange and strangers, and a stranger. And he called this paper, the paper that he wrote about the Buber, the form, the nature of Buber's loneliness. It's a loneliness, said Simon, it's a loneliness of a teacher who does not have the authority of a leader. So these are the points, these are the reactions, and I will end by saying the following. I'll end by saying the following, which I didn't think about before, but if you look at all that Buber is saying, and it caused the anger, and we looked at all the points that raised this anger and criticism and made him as if aloof, not connected to the reality of the time. But if we see the leitmotif, it is one of a search, a pursuit of ethics and morals that are not a luxury that one can postpone for calmer days. Calmer days will not come in the Middle East. And this is not a luxury to be postponed, but something that should be the basis and the foundation of politics and of everyday now. And when I look at what is happening today, I think that looking around, we can understand much better what Buber is saying regarding moral and ethics as the basis and as the foundation of everything. Thank you.